Can all of you check the YouTube link? Let me know as soon as it's live.
Archana, are you here? Oh, yeah, Abhishek, I got the notification for the thing.
Yeah, it's live, I guess.
Yeah, let me
Murchana,
know
are you
as
here?
soon as the YouTube thing is displaying the Zoom meet, okay?
Okay. Okay, if Murchana is in here, Rajpratim, can you do me a favor? Please keep a track of all the IDIA members who attend today, okay?
Okay, sure. All right.
Thanks. Give me the list after the meeting.
All right.
If Murchana is in here, Rajpratim, can you do me a favor? Please keep a track of all the IDIA members who attend today, okay?
Okay, sure.
Give me the list after the meeting.
All right.
Yeah. Hi, Priyanka. Good evening.
Hi. Hi, Shri.
Hi Priyanka, good evening.
So,
Evening.
Mahi will be presenting the PPT for you today.
Yeah.
Whenever you need her to go forward or backward, just let her know once and she will do so.
Sure.
Good evening, ma'am.
We've also started live streaming on YouTube. So since Zoom has a limited capacity, even the premium models, we are also simultaneously streaming on YouTube. So we might not see everyone here, and we'll just begin in another 2-3 minutes to let more people join in.
Yeah. Sure.
Hi Priyanka.
Hi.
So I am Nigma. I think we have met a long time back.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm currently looking after Northeast chapter,
Okay.
and I think we should. Are we waiting for 5 minutes or are we starting?
I'm just 2 more minutes and we'll start
Great.
since we're already streaming. Yeah. Shivang, I think you can begin now.
Am I visible and audible? Because it was showing my network bandwidth is low. Good evening to everyone who joined us for this workshop on CV Building and Internships organized by IDIA. My name is Shivang Mishra and I am a team member of IDIA Assam Chapter. Before beginning, I would like to give a short primer about IDIA. The Increasing Diversity by Increasing Access IDIA to Legal Education project is a nationwide movement to empower underprivileged communities by creating top quality lawyers from within. Founded by legal academic late Dr. Shamnad Bashir, it runs on the backbone of more than 500 passionate student volunteers spread across India. Underprivileged students in India lack equitable access to quality legal education. IDIA identifies underprivileged students with an aptitude for law and trains them for law entrance exams over a 1 or 2 year period. IDIA not only enables access to legal education, it also fosters diversity at leading law schools and enriches the very process of legal education. The IDIA Assam chapter was previously known as the Northeast chapter. It is currently being operated by a team of student volunteers from National Law University, Assam. The group has been striving towards the promotion of the cause of IDIA. The team believes in collaborative efforts for providing access to all those who are still unaware of the prospects that a legal career has to offer for them and has been working full time in taking forward the cause of IDIA. Today, for this workshop, I request everyone to not to try and unmute themselves. Towards the end of the webinar, there is a special segment reserved for Q&A. We request everyone to wait for that to have their queries resolved. If you're watching on the YouTube live stream, you can put your questions on the chat and they will be acknowledged accordingly. I would also like to inform everyone that the IDIA Assam chapter is currently looking for trainees, and if you know someone, we shall be grateful if you could connect us with them. We are happy to help all underprivileged students moving forward to make a career in law. The contact details of the Assam chapter of IDIA are mentioned in the chat box. I would now pass the floor to my senior and deputy team leader, mentorship team for IDIA Assam chapter, Sneha Ahmed.
Thank you so much, Shiva. And before we begin today's session, a brief introduction to our guest is in order. Who we have with us today is Ms. Priyanka Hazarika. Ms. Hazarika completed her early education in Assam, right after which she went ahead to become an IDIA scholar and graduated from National University, Delhi in 2018. Ever since, she's worked as an associate at AZB and Partners and is currently working as an associate at the prestigious DMD Advocates, New Delhi. Adding to the list of her accolades during the course of her graduation, she also interned at several esteemed law firms such as L&L Partners, Khaitan Co, Sagar Associates, and the list goes on. Ms. Hazarika also has an extensive research experience in the areas of intellectual property rights and consumer protection. By the end of this workshop, we're very hopeful that through the knowledge and wisdom shared by Ms. Hazarika, each participant today goes back with a much more enlightened idea of how to go about the process of applying to internships and eventually post-university professional engagements. We're very grateful to have you with us today, ma'am. And if you're ready, you may please take over.
Thank you so much, Sneha. So I would like to begin with a disclaimer that I'm not an expert at what I'm doing today. So this is just my attempt to share with all of you what I have learned through my own experiences and the mistakes that I have made while applying for internships and while making my CV. So yes, and before I start again, I understand that discussions on CVs, internships, this can be a little overwhelming and intimidating for a lot of us because most of us generally feel like we've not done enough. As much as we all understand the importance of a CV and how it encapsulates who we are and it cannot be divorced from us as a person, we also need to realize a few things. Say, like, our CV is not capable of capturing a lot of structural issues that are prevalent, like accessibility, financial situation of the applicant, social background, your social networks, your health, your physical health, or your mental health. So I would just like to emphasize on the fact that this is not the end of the world and this is not a complete portrayal of who we are as a person. There is always scope for improvement from wherever we want to. And in the process of achieving and in the process of improving, if we need help, I would strongly suggest all of you to reach out to people. And at the most, what's the worst that can happen? That they won't reply. But in the event they do, it will be very helpful for all of you. So I would like to request you to reach out to people on LinkedIn. I have done that myself as a student quite a lot of times. Maybe 70% of the times I haven't received a response, but then again, there are 30% of the times when it has worked. So again, feel free, reach out to people. And yeah, let's start now. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So there are a few things that we need to keep in mind while we are preparing our CV. CV making is not something that you can finish in 30 minutes or an hour. This is a time-consuming process, and you should definitely give it some time and give at least 3-4 hours to it. Once you're done preparing your CV, make sure that you've sent it to other people so that they can review. By other people, I mean you can send it out to family, you can send it out to friends, you can send it out to seniors in college. And that is something that has helped me personally a lot. So, yeah. One of the most important things when you are applying for an internship is that you will have to contextualize your CV and cover letter. You cannot be under an impression that you will have a standard set document as a cover letter or a CV that you can use to apply to all kinds of organization. Maybe type could work for a particular kind of organizations. Say a particular type of CV and cover letter can go to law firms, or a particular can go to human rights organizations. So again, you have to customize it and you have to contextualize it according to the person, according to the organization that you are sending it to. Then another important thing, which is the subject line of the email that you sent out. In the email, you have to make sure that you are clear about what you are applying to, what position you are applying to, if there's a specific team that you're applying to, or if there is a specific location. Say a corporate law firm has multiple offices in multiple cities. So you would want to make it clear as to which location you are applying for. So your subject line will have to give them an idea about, a brief idea about your application. It doesn't need to be very long. It has to be clear but concise. Then the most important thing, and I cannot emphasize enough on this, that is paying attention to details. This has happened to me a lot of times, that I haven't proofed a document properly in my initial years of law school, proofed the CV or the cover letter, and they've gone out with errors. So this is something that you want to be specifically very, very careful about. You have to be very careful about proofing, be it spelling, grammatical errors, or say spelling errors. So just be very careful with the proofing. Proof it 2, 3 times, 2, 3, 4 times. Get your friends to do it, get your seniors to do it, but just make sure that you do it. When I say consistency, by consistency, I mean that how you write a certain thing has to be consistent throughout. For one internship, the heading cannot be the name of the organization. And for one internship, the heading cannot be interned with. So those are things that you need to keep in mind. Or say, for example, the month that you are referring to, while you are referring to the duration of the internship, it has to be uniform. If you are using the name of the full month, in some places, you have to make sure that it has to be the full month. If you're using 22, it has to be 22. If you're using 2022, it has to be 2022 throughout. So that is something that you should keep in mind, because these might seem like little things, but they really matter a lot. Even now, when we work at such organizations, such small, minute details do matter a lot. So that is something you want to take care of. Your document has to be properly formatted. In a subsequent slide, we will go on and talk about how to format your document. Your document has to be named appropriately. Say your document cannot say copy of this and this and this, or in bracket a 2 or a 3, which generally appears when there are copies of documents with the same name in your system. You have to make sure that this version that you're sending out has to be named properly. Then the person who you are addressing it to, you have to be very careful that you're addressing the person correctly. The name, the spelling. You have to make sure that if you're writing an email to a male, then you address him as sir. This is one mistake I have made personally, that during my earlier years when I applied to someone, and the email that I wrote to was to a female, but because my standard cover letter would say dear sir, or actually it said dear sir / ma'am, but when you know that the person you're sending it to is a female, that's the least that you can do. You can remove the reference to sir there. So those are tiny little things that you have to be very careful about. Then another mistake that I have made previously is not attaching the CV and just hitting the send button. So please be very careful before you send them, hit the send button. Just be careful that you have attached everything that is required for that internship application. So that is that. Then coming to another thing, sorry, I think I forgot to mention that in my presentation, is that the email that you are sending it out from, it should not be some very informal thing like you refer to say a Marvel character, or you have things like littleprincess@gmail.com. These are not email IDs that you want to be like sending out your professional emails from. So in case you don't have a professional email ID, I would request you to register one and then use that email ID for your applications. Then coming down to page limits, there is no hard and fast rule about the page limit, but it's always recommended that you should try to contain everything in your CV in 2 pages. Sometimes I understand that it might not be possible, even if, because you might have a lot of achievements, you might have a lot of publications, then it can go up to 3 pages, but we should take our best effort to keep it to 2 pages. The next thing is sending PDF versions of our CV, because, Word versions can go wrong sometimes. There are lines that appear. So you will have to convert it into a PDF before sending it out. You don't have to use some online software. You can just do it through your MS Word application, and you can just convert it to a PDF and send it out. Your CV has to be subdivided into relevant sections. So correct grouping is very, very important. Say, for example, you are involved with IDIA, or you are involved with legal aid committee. That doesn't need to go into your extracurricular activities, because it's not extracurricular activities. You would probably want to place that under positions of responsibility. So those are things that you might want to keep in mind, that while making your CV, that you just correctly group whatever you are doing. Then while you are describing what work you have done at a particular internship, you have to be very, very specific, because again, this is interview fodder. If you have an interview for recruitment or for an internship, that interview will be based on what you've written in the CV. So you cannot write something very broad like worked on the CPC or worked on the Arbitration Act. It is always suggested that you specifically mention, say, the section or what aspect of the section that you worked on in relation to a particular law, and not just mention the whole act, because then it just broadens your horizon and you have to know everything. When you say researched on Arbitration Act, the interviewer is not going to know what you researched on. So that person can ask you anything about the Arbitration Act, which is not a good position to place yourself in. So for your own sake, you would want to be very specific while describing the work that you have done. Then another important thing is that I personally believe is that I have come across CVs which mention skills, which mentions qualities, language. Now, if you've mentioned what you have done and what your experiences have been, there is no other need to specifically mention that I have research skills or I have drafting skills. That will be clear from your internship experiences or the experiences that you have had. So let the CV speak for itself. And say qualities like I am a hardworking, diligent person. That is not something you would want to mention in your CV, because let's just let our activities when we work there show them what we are, and not be too. And when we mention all of this, I just feel like it might come across as you're not a very sincere person and you just are not very modest about yourself. So maybe you would want to skip that. That's again a very personal opinion of mine. In terms of languages, you might want to put languages if the position that you are applying for it specifically requires you to know a particular language. If that is not the requirement, if that is not the case, then maybe you would want to skip that section also and create some more space in your CV to write more important sections in that. So can we move on to the next slide, please? Mahi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I am facing a technical glitch here. Just a second.
Yeah. So let's talk about formatting now. Like I said, it's very important to check your grammatical, spelling, and typographical errors. So be very, very careful with that. The second thing is you have to justify your CV, because otherwise it'll look very bad and shoddy. So you will want to justify. It's very easy. You just need to select Control A and Control J. Use simpler and more professional fonts like Times New Roman or Garamond or Calibri, instead of using fonts like Comic Sans, or say something which has like those cursive fonts. So instead of that, just stick to simpler and more professional font styles. The font size, again, depending on how much content you have on your CV, can go between 11 and 12. It has to be consistent, not just in terms of the content, but in terms of spacing as well. You might have to fix the paragraph spacing. You might have to fix the line spacing. Again, depending on the content that you have in your CV, the line spacing can go anything between a 1 and a 1.5. Don't make it 2, because then it looks like you're just trying to cover the space. Do not use templates that are available on the internet, because again, those templates are very flowery. They'll put colors, they'll put your pictures, but again, this is not something that might be appreciated at a law firm setup or like a litigation chamber. So that is something that you need to keep in mind. In terms of formatting, another thing that I would suggest all of you is, before sending out your CV or finalizing your CV, I would request you to take a printout of the CV and see and judge for yourself if everything is fine, if everything looks fine, if the font looks fine, is it legible, does the spacing look fine when you are printing it out? Because in all probabilities, when your CV goes out to an organization, and when maybe a senior partner or a senior level person at that organization will look at your CV, they will not look at the email. They will end up printing the CV and taking a look at that. So make sure that you do this. And yeah, so that is it about formatting. Can we move on to the next slide? Yeah, now the next slide is about what are the general sections that you would want to cover in your CV. The first section, the first thing that goes on the top of the CV is your correct contact details. Then you go about we'll talk about each of these in details in the subsequent slides. So I'll just first tell you what you need. So then you need to put your educational qualification and background. Then you can talk about additional courses, programs that you have attended in college, which might be relevant to the internship or the job that you are applying to. Then you refer to your professional exposure. Your professional exposure can be, so why I have used the word professional exposure and not internship experiences? Because sometimes there are a lot of things that we do, especially in our initial years. We might be involved with research projects, or we might be, say, assisting a teacher with something with a research project, and we might not necessarily be doing internships. Those might not qualify as internships, but then if you have a broad term like professional exposure, then you can include those things into it. Then there will be a section on publications and editorial experiences if you have had any. Then your research experiences, which will include your research centers that you have been a part of, research projects that you've been a part of. Your moot court achievements will come next. Then it'll be positions of responsibility. And then we talk a little about extracurricular activities. So yeah, can we move on to the next slide? So when I say correct contact details, you have to make sure that you've put your name, your current residential address, the email ID that is working. For the email, I would suggest that use a Gmail ID instead of your college IDs. Because sometimes what happens is once you graduate out of the college, your college might shut down that ID. So this is specifically like relevant if you're, say, applying for an LLM abroad. Then they might get back to you at a time when your college ID might not be active. So you might want to consider using your own personal Gmail ID for this. You mention your correct contact number so that they can reach out to you in case they want to. Then coming to educational qualification and background. So here is a little tricky part about it. Now, there might be questions in our mind whether we want to mention our school grades, as in the grades that we achieved in class 10th and class 12th. That will again depend on the year that you are currently in. So maybe that might be relevant for the first, second year applications or even third year. But I think towards the later part of your law school, what actually will matter is probably what your qualification in terms of which semester you are in, what your score is at law school, and not what you've scored at school. So that is again a personal choice again. You can use a table to represent that because again, it's clearer then. So putting details about your school and the grades that you received in your 10th and 12th standard is something that's a personal choice. I have personally not put it beyond my second year. I have put it till my second year, but I have removed it from my CV since my third year. So that is one thing. Then while you are mentioning about your current institution, you will have to mention the institution as well as the current year of study. You will have to mention which semester you will be in. You are in, you will be in, you are in. You will be in when you in turn will go into the cover letter where you are introducing yourself. So there you can write which semester you will be in while you do that internship, during the period of the internship, if that's a different semester. But on the CV, you will write your current semester. And while putting your CGPA, again, you cannot put things like 4.5 or 5.5. What you have to do is you have to make it clear for the person who's reading it out. And you have to put the denominator there. Because a 4.5 can be a 4.5 out of 7 or a 4.5 out of 5. So you want to give a clear representation to the person who's reading it. So you should ideally put that. Now, another thing is, some people are of the opinion that if you have a lower CGPA, you should not mention that on your CV. That is a blunder that you do not want to make. Because when you don't put your CGPA, it just highlights the fact to the reader that, okay, this person might have a very low CGPA, that it's not even, that he doesn't even want to put that up on his CV. And honestly, once you enter the workspace, what you have scored in law school is something that really does not matter. Once you enter the workspace, nobody would ask you what your CGPA in law school would be. So just don't think that having a low CGPA is the end of the world. What you should focus on is a more holistic growth. And I think, and if you feel like your CGPA is low, maybe you can work towards improving it. But again, you don't have to fuss a lot over it, and just work towards improving it. You don't have to worry a lot about it. Then the next bit that you need to put, also while you are talking about educational qualification and background, say you are a person you are applying to a IPR firm, and you have done a IPR related seminar course in your college, or a IPR related you have topped a IPR related subject, or you've gotten the highest grade possible in that subject. You might want to mention that, because again, that puts an impression in the mind of the reader that this person is interested in this field. And that might be a added plus point for all of you. So that is something that you might want to do. Additional courses and programs, if there are courses in your university, like at NLUD, we had a lot of these courses. So those courses, if you think they're relevant to this internship experience, say if you have done a course on smart contracts and you are applying to, say, a technology-based organization or a startup, so there you would want to mention that. Because, or say you have done a diploma on a particular aspect, because say if you are going to an organization which deals with renewable energy or the energy sector, and you've done some course which taught you how to draft agreements in that sector, say a O&M agreement or an EPC agreement, that is something that you would want to highlight to your prospective employer, because that is something that will always help. So while mentioning this, you have to mention what the course was, who was it offered by, and a short description of the course. Like, say, for example, I had in my college attended a Copyright X course. So I would write Copyright X course offered by Harvard University. And the description would be that it's a course on comparative copyright law amongst US and India. So you would want to give a brief description of what that course was, so that the person feels like you are interested in that particular field. So that is something that you can do. Then can we move on to the next slide, please? Yeah, so coming to professional exposure / internships, we should go by a reverse chronological order. And while we're doing the reverse chronological order, that's again not a hard and fast rule. Say if there is something that's more relevant to the experience, to the application that you are making. Say your recent internship might be a clerkship with a judge, but previously you had done corporate internships and now you are applying to a corporate law firm. You might want to put your corporate law firm internships above, because then again, it will make it more contextual for the person reading it. Then again, like I said earlier, we have to be very, very specific and precise about what we have done. Instead of writing it in big paragraphs, we might want to use bullet points. So an internship generally lasts for about, say, a period of 21 to 30 days. So you have to be very careful about what you are putting in your CV, because you have to, at the end of the day, justify whatever you've written in your CV. So just be very careful about what you're putting. And in an internship, which lasts for about 20 to 30 days, if you are given an assignment, you don't have to put like very little things that you have done, maybe a MCA search or something. Put bigger things like what you researched on, if you prepared some draft notes for someone, if you worked on some opinion. So put things like that. Again, in this bullet points, you might want to club things like researched on blah, 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 and prepared notes on. And prepared notes. So that will be for whatever you've researched. Then you can put things like assisted in a due diligence if you have. So things should again be categorized in bullets, but make sure that you don't make big paragraphs because then the reader loses interest in it. So, and do not write obvious and generic statements like that a lot of us do, like things like attended court proceedings. Now, if you do a litigation internship, you will obviously have to attend court proceedings. Instead of writing court proceedings, you would want maybe to be a little more specific and write attended court proceedings at this court, whether it was a civil court, whether it was a criminal court, on a matter related to blah. Or say attended a matter at this tribunal related to this. Don't write those generic statements because again, that shows that you are not completely into the process. So just be very careful about it. Prioritize relevant internships. You do not have to mention all the internships. Say today, if I'm applying to a human rights organization, say I'm applying for a job to MKSS, Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, my experience with corporate law firms is not going to add anything to my application. So here, what are the kind of things that I would want to put? I'd want to put what kind of field work I have done as a part of my college activities. Like I was involved in the death penalty research project. So I'd put that and say that I have experience in field work and I have interviewed people, I have done this. So try to put things which are relevant to your application and the organization that you're applying to. For internships, do not use tabular representation because again, we all know when we put tables into documents, it just wastes a lot of space. And I have seen people putting up things in tables and then as a result of which they might have done a lot more things in the internship, but they were only able to put only a few of those things in the CV. So again, that's a matter of choice, but what I would like to suggest is maybe you just want to go by plain text and not put in tables because it's easier that way. Then coming to publications. Publications is something that is very, very important because that shows that you are interested in a particular area of law and you were willing to engage with it. You were willing to look further and analyze that issue or that topic in depth. So that is something that always helps because that shows your research, your analytical skills, your drafting skills. So that is something that I would suggest that all of you should try. And I would say that instead of like producing 10 articles for some random websites or some random blogs, try and focus on writing one piece that is of a great quality. Try for an article to be published at a good legal website or say a platform like Wired or a very good journal, international journal, national journal, instead of some 10 small blogs in some random websites. So just focus on that, prioritize on quality over quantity. While talking about your publications, you might want to create categories in it like what kind of publications you have done. They might be, say, journal articles, they might be online articles, you might have done a case law review. So just you might want to categorize it so that it becomes more reader friendly. If you can, and if you have a link to that particular publication, you might want to put that as well. The other thing is that I would request all of you to not engage in is, do not pay journals to get your articles published. Because you would think that that will help building your CV and putting something on your CV. But at the end of the day, whoever is reading your CV, they have also been law students at some point of time. And they have been in the profession and they know what these journals do, how they charge money from people for publications. So that is not something, you don't want to give them an impression that you are so desperate to get your article published that you have paid someone to get your article published. So just refrain from mentioning those publications on your CV. Can we move on to the next slide? So personally, I have not engaged in writing a lot of articles. I was more engaged towards the research experiences. I was involved with quite a few research centers, like the Center for IPR at NLU Delhi. I was involved with the Center for Communication Governance. So, and then I was a part of research projects that these organizations would undertake, and these would be very long term. These would be 2 years, 3 years long research projects. So I don't have an expertise in publications as such. In my CV also, it's mostly focused on research experiences. Then talking about research experiences, what if you have any? And I'm sure nowadays all these colleges have come up with research centers. They're starting their own research projects. So while you are writing about those projects, you would want to give a brief description so that the person knows that you have a skill set to apply for that job. So say if I'm applying to an IPR firm, my engagement with the IPR center and my engagement with the projects that they have undertaken will be helpful, because then they will know that I am interested in that field. And like I said earlier, that if I'm applying to a, say, NGO, which is based on field work, a lot of field work. So there, my experience working with DPRP would be helpful. So you would want to, while you are, just don't mention the name of the project and the center, but try mentioning about what you have done in those centers, which gives you a particular skill set to apply for this internship position or job position. Coming to moot court achievements. So this again will be a separate section in your CV, because this is something that shows the employer that you are a person who can commit himself for a long duration, because generally these moot court assignments are a little long term. Say for 3 months you attend to the same problem, and then you are breaking down things. You have to break down problems. So it helps in showing the person who's reading your CV that this person has an analytical mindset and he can break down problems and has great research skills. So those are all skills that a good lawyer should possess. So that is something, so mentioning about your moot court achievements will be very helpful. Say, while you are mentioning about your moot court experience, you might want to mention what moot court you participated in, the year, and where you finished at. If you won that particular moot court competition, what stage of the competition did you reach? Did you just participate? Just mention that. And don't forget to mention a little bit about what it is. So what problem you worked on. Say today, if you are applying for a, say, position in the UN with the organization which deals with refugees, and say if you have worked on a Henry Dunant moot, which basically talks about migration laws, about refugee laws. So that again gives you an edge, and they would know that you have a background to what they are doing. So if you feel like what your moot is relevant to the position that you are applying to, just write in one sentence, just write what the problem was about and what you researched upon. That again is an added plus to your application. Talking about position of responsibilities, mention if you have been a part of any program, if you have led a project in college or led some initiative in college. Because again, at the end of the day, this shows that you are a person who can work in the team. It's not just about leading the team, but even if you've worked with the IDIA chapter, for example, or if you've worked with the legal aid committee in your college, you would want to mention that you did work for this, and this is the position of responsibility that you had occupied. And this would show that you can work in the team, you can be a good leader, which is something that any organization you go to will appreciate, because at the end of the day, whatever organization you join, you will have to end up working in a team. You cannot be a solo player there. So it's very important for them to understand that whether you are a team person or not. And mentioning things like this will show that you are a team player and you have worked with teams, you have led teams previously. So that is something. Then the second point that I have written is, if there is, say, a position of responsibility that you've been nominated for by the college or by the faculty. Like, for example, when I was in college, my VC had recommended me to be a part of a committee of the Delhi High Court. So that is something that shows that you have something different from the others, that a VC or a faculty of your organization would think that you are a little different and would give you an edge basically over others. So that is something, those are the kind of things that you want to mention here. Then talking about extracurricular activities, again, you cannot use too much space in your CV dedicated to this. But again, mentioning this demonstrates a lot of skills. Like if you are a dancer, or if you are a singer, or if you are into theater, it will show that you are a very confident person, that you can go up on stage and face a crowd. Tomorrow you will be able to face the clients that you have to deal with, or face the court. So that is something that is very helpful. Again, it shows creativity. Participating in events like, say, debates, that shows how that you have an analytical mindset. If you have, say, organized a fest for your college or organized an event for your college, that will show that you have leadership skills. So these are also skills that recruiters generally look at. So do not think that this section is not necessary, but I would suggest that be extremely judicious of the space that you give this section in your CV, because then you don't want to miss out on other important stuff because you have given this a lot of space in your CV. So I think that is it on the contents of what should go into a CV. Can we move to the next slide, please? Now, let's come to the cover letter. Now, what is a cover letter? It's basically, if I have to draw a parallel, it's like a trailer to a movie. A cover letter should be able to generate interest in the mind of the reader about to open your CV and look at your CV. If your cover letter is not perfect and if your cover letter has mistakes and errors, the person will not get a good impression. It's like casting a first impression on your recruiter, on your future employer. So you want to be very, very careful. I would say in a way, it's very important to get you to the, at least get them to open your CV and look at it. So we will discuss how you should draft your cover letter in the subsequent slide. But generally, just to give you an idea, you have to be, your cover letter has to create interest in the mind of the reader to open the attachment. And you have to completely treat it like a trailer. Say if a trailer is too long and it gives out too much information, it might just bore the person who's reading it, or it might just create a lot of presumption in their mind. So you want to be very careful about what you mention on your cover letter to an extent that that person is interested in reading in opening your CV and reading and learning to know much more about it. Now I have told you why a cover letter is important. Now coming to what the tone of your cover letter should be. So your cover letter should be confident, but it should be modest. It should not come across to the person that like you are bragging about your skill sets or bragging about your experiences. You should avoid usage of sentences like, I am confident that I will be an asset to XYZ. And instead of using such statements, you might want to use statements like, say, based on my previous experiences, I believe that I would be able to contribute to the organization. So you don't want to sound too arrogant and too preachy about what you have done, and just be confident about what you have done, because you have to bring into their notice that whatever skill sets you have, yet not sound too arrogant. So that is a thin line that we all have to be careful about. But yeah, like I said, you can just essentially both the sentences that I told in the earlier example mean the same thing. But then it was just the way that both the sentences were presented, which make a difference about how you are seen as a person. So just be very careful about the tone. Then the next portion is, can the same cover letter be used for applying to all organizations? The answer is no. Like I said in the first slide, that you will have to contextualize your application and your CV. And this has, again, because you have to generate that interest in the mind of the reader. And for you to be able to do that, you will have to customize your cover letter. So just do that. Then, and just customize it according to the organization that you are applying to. Then another question that might come up is, should the cover letter be attached? Whether it should be an attachment to the email. The question is no. That's basically the body of the email that you send out. in some exceptional cases, some employers and some recruiters have some platforms where you might not be able to send an email, but you'll have to upload those things. So in those cases, yes, that will go as not as an attachment to the email, but that will be uploaded on the platform, or however the employer wants it. If they've specifically requested for an attachment of the cover letter, you might want to send it as an attachment, but otherwise this will go as the body of your email. Then what should be the contents of the cover letter? That is something that we'll address in the next slide. So can we just move on to the next slide? So I would say that your cover letter has to address all these things that I mentioned in the slide. The first para probably will be about what position, what team, what location you are applying for. Then the second para, you will write about why you want to work in that particular organization. Third paragraph will talk about what skills and experiences you bring to the organization in terms of, again, like I said, that you will have to customize it basis where you are making an application. So you will have to mention what organizations you've worked at previously or what courses you have done that might help you to contribute to that organization. So that is something that you would want to highlight. The next paragraph would basically cover how you think working there will benefit you and how it majorly fits in the larger scheme of things that you want to do. So, and then you have to give an appropriate conclusion. So by appropriate conclusion, I would say something like a paragraph like that this email and my CV will help me bring into consideration for a position at your firm. Thank you in advance for the time. And I look forward to hearing from you at your convenience. Please let me know if you need anything else as a part of this application. So those are the kind of things that you would want to add in the conclusion paragraph, because that will show that you've asked them you've asked them to consider you and let you know at the earliest at their convenience again. So again, you don't want to sound too pushy with the last paragraph, but then again, you have to draw that line and be very careful with the usage of words, and that is how you would want to conclude the cover letter. Yeah, I think that is it for the presentation, and we are on time.
Yeah, we're exactly on time. Thank you so much, Priyanka. Mahi, could you move on to the next slide? Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much, Priyanka. That was such an insightful session. I don't think anyone does not have their basics clear of the do's and don'ts of CV building and writing a cover letter. So we really, really thank you for that great session. It's been a joy hearing you. Now, since we don't have that much time, about 15 to 20 minutes, we'll be happy to take some questions. We've received a lot of questions in our Google form links, but we'll also be giving preference to live questions that come in the chat box now via Zoom or via our YouTube live stream. So before people start sending questions in via the chat box, I'll go ahead and ask you a question that came through us from the Google Forms. So this person asks that, are coding skills more important than other skill sets to sustain in the corporate world?
Yeah. So again, thank you for the question. They don't. There is no single skill set that, helps you in surviving in a particular framework that you'll be working in. I have friends who've never mooted, and they're excellent corporate lawyers. So that is not something that brings you into, that's not a deal breaker or a deal maker. It is just an added to show that you have certain skill sets. So I hope that answers your question.
Definitely. One person asks a very specific question, which is how to secure a job after a 2-year gap in a CV post-graduation. Can an internship after graduation count as PQE?
A internship will not count as PQE. But again, even if you have taken a gap, and like I said, there might be a lot of reasons for that, you should just be able to justify the gap that you took. It might be for any personal reason, it might be for any health reason, but as long as you're able to justify your break, and after that, post the break, you've again joined and done some internship, that clearly shows that you are interested in coming back to the profession. So I don't think that should be an issue.
Great, thanks so much. Saksham asks, what things should be kept in CV and how to present to maximize the chance for selections in commissions like the NHRC if one stays outside Delhi? What type of extracurricular activities would help more, do you think?
So this is in relation to human rights organizations.
Indeed.
Yeah. So if, say, if you have interned with some NGO, those kind of experiences can be helpful. If you have done some human rights related research projects, that is helpful. Like, say, for example, if you've done something on prisoner rights, I know it's more specific, but again, that's also a part of human rights. And then if you have worked on, during some internship, if you've worked on, say, something like you've worked with the Safai Karmachari Andolan. So those are kind of things that you can put. Any human rights related experience is helpful. If you have taken some course, academic course on it, that is something that can also be helpful. But again, experience is again more helpful in all situations. But having said that, even if you do not have any prior experiences related to any human rights activities or human rights organizations, you might just want to mention whatever you have done, maybe litigation internships, whatever you've done. And in your cover letter, you have to express why you want to do that NHRC internship. What is it about human rights that makes you want to work in that field? So things like that. So, and like, although this might not be exactly relevant to the NHRC question, I have a friend who had done a moot on refugee law, and now she works with the UN organization on refugee law. So those are also kind of experiences, and she's done a lot of work on refugee law post that. But then while you are applying for the first time, because it has to start somewhere, you have to show how you are interested about it and why you want to do that particular work. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. Abhishek asks a very particular and relevant question, which is that should we include webinars which we attend and attend successfully in our CVs? And if so, what section do you think we should put that in?
Webinars would go into additional courses that you take up, additional courses / programs that you take up. Yes, you can put that if it's relevant again. Like, not just in case of webinars, I would say even if you're attending seminars for that matter, and if you think that it might be relevant and it might push your case for that particular internship, you might want to mention it. But again, if it's something that's completely unrelated to what you are applying for, then maybe you would want to skip it. And especially if you don't have space in your CV and you would want to put more relevant things there.
Right. So one question that comes to us from the registration, which we saw a lot of, so I think it's a very popular sentiment. People are asking that, law students are asking that, if you're from a private law school, is there something that you need to do differently, or some other activities you need to prioritize over some other activities? So is there something that private law school, law college student needs to do differently in their CVs? What do you think about that?
I would say, I know this might sound a little illogical at this point of time when you are in law school, and there are a lot of insecurities around a lot of things. But in the larger scheme of things, and once you enter a workspace, it doesn't really matter about which law school you come from. As long as you know your job and you know how to get it done properly, that's all that matters. All I would suggest you is that be very diligent with the internships that you do. Make the best use of the opportunities you get. And yeah, I think otherwise your CV, like I said, this is majorly what your CV has to cover. And try different things. Your college might not have a lot of research centers or a lot of research opportunities, but you might be someone who's interested in research. Apply to different other colleges. Like, for example, I know Jindal Global Law School has some great research centers. NLU Delhi has great research centers. NLS has great research centers. So just apply to those and try exploring things. Like, especially when you are starting off, don't start off with the mindset that, oh, I have to do this for sure. Like, for example, when I started off, I tried my hand at everything and then decided what I want to do. Maybe towards my third year, but I tried doing all kinds of internships. So that is something that I would suggest, not just to private law school students, but generally to everyone, that everything gives you an experience. I have gone and I was in Rajasthan, in very rural parts of Rajasthan, and we didn't have accommodation. We didn't have basic amenities like washrooms. But I went there and I did an internship there. And I think it's one of the best experiences I have had in law school. Because everything has something or the other to teach you. So just don't close up yourself to things that, oh no, I will be a corporate lawyer and I will not do things. Right from day one of law school, just try out things, see what you like. It's not necessary that you have to do a moot, because in the rat race, everyone is going and doing moots. Everyone is going and doing negotiation competitions, and everyone is going and doing research centers. But as per your interest areas, just try and explore.
Right. I think that also answers a popular question that we got, which was how to deal with the fear of missing, so-called fear of missing out while doing one thing. And like there's a million other things law students are doing all the time. So yeah, I think that
you
also
don't have to be everywhere. You
Yeah.
don't have to do everything. Just make sure whatever you are doing has to be done with like you have to be completely diligent in what you are doing. You have to make the best use of that opportunity that you are given, be it an internship, be it a moot court competition that is being allotted to you, be it anything. Just make sure that you make it a learning out. You make it a point to learn something out of it. So
Yeah, I think Chitan also asks a good question. Law firms I've seen want writing samples most of the time when you need to proceed to the next stage. So
Yeah.
he's asking, or they're asking, can you tell us more about what is that writing sample, what to write and how to write? I think that's a broad question, but you can just.
Yeah. So writing sample would, if you are confident that any of the projects that you have done in college is a good writing sample, you can just send that across. That is how I mostly did my writing samples in college. Because then sometimes you do not honestly have the time, because at the same time you're applying to a lot of places, and a lot of places want you to send them writing samples. So you would want to use whatever you have, the projects that you have done as a part of your curriculum. You can maybe modify it a little bit, make things look better in that article. And if you're confident that that is a good writing sample, you can use that itself. Otherwise, you can pick up. Otherwise, if you don't want to use something that you already have, you're not confident, then maybe whatever you are applying to, if it's say a corporate internship, if it's a M&A team, you might want to pick up something that's relevant to their field. By something I mean, you can pick up a case law. Say if it's a tech startup and you might want to write about cryptocurrency. You might want to write about the Supreme Court judgment, which talks about, which invalidates the RBI circulars, which declare that cryptocurrency is illegal. The Supreme Court order invalidates those RBI circulars. So maybe something on that. So if you do not have anything ready, I would suggest that go with the practice area of that organization. Whatever team you are applying to, if it's a corporate team, pick up any relevant topic in corporate law, any relevant change that has come up, and try to do an analysis of it. It doesn't need to be very long. It can be something very short. And usually the organizations give you a word limit. But make sure whatever you are sending, again, pay attention to detail. Like I said, for your CV and for your cover letter. Because at the end of the day, when you end up joining a law firm or working in a law firm, there will be times when you'll have to read reports and send out reports to clients, due diligence reports, which are 300, 400, 500 pages long. And if your recruiter sees that you cannot manage to, say, remove proofing errors from a 3-pager document or a 2-pager document, how will you make sure that you send a error-free report to the client? So those are things that are very important, because honestly, when we come out of law school, we don't know a lot about the practice. And about the practice, whatever you will learn is mostly through your practice. So then they do not expect you to know a lot about the area when you are starting off. They want you to know basics about it. So you don't have to go into some high-level analytical stuff. It can be some basic stuff with good analysis and like pay attention to details. There should not be any errors in it.
Yeah, understood. I think the last question we'll take for today, since we are quickly running out of time, is Sumit's question about basically, I think, cold emailing and what to do when you don't get a response back. Should you like how soon should you write to them again? What's the procedure you usually follow?
Yeah. So this is something that I have faced a lot in law school as well. That you write to people, you don't get an acceptance or a rejection. So then it makes it difficult for you to like place things for yourself and plan out things for yourself. So what I did personally was I would give it 10 to 15 days after I send out an application. Then I would follow up with an email saying further to my email, I would want to know dated blah, blah, blah. I want to know the status of my application. So that is something that I would do in say 15 days, after 15 days of sending out the application. And even then, if I don't get a response after 7 days of sending out the reminder email, I try to get in touch through calls. So I would call up the reception and ask them to connect to the HR. And so that way, at least I knew that whether they accepted me or rejected me. So I can go ahead and plan ahead. One tip that I would want to give all of you is before you start your winter internship, start applying for your summer internships. Again, likewise, before you start your summer internships, send out applications for your winter internships. It is very important. And because, to be very honest, in terms of internship, it's always a first come, first serve basis. If, like, I understand that there is a lot that happens basis contacts and your social networks, but otherwise, for general crowd like us, so that will be mostly first come, first serve basis. Maybe the first lot of CVs that they see, and you would want to be in the first lot. So try applying in time, well ahead of time, actually 6-7 months before the actual period of internship.
Great. I think that's been very, very helpful, Priyanka ma'am. I'm very honored to deliver the vote of thanks at the end of this, insightful and a great learning webinar. It has been quite a stimulating and unique experience for all of us who have participated in this CV Building and Internship workshop this evening. And I'm sure that the skills that we have, learned today that will continue to be of great use to us in the foreseeable future. So first and foremost, we would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Professor V.K. Ahuja sir, who's always been extremely supportive of the IDIA Assam chapter, which of course emanates out of NLU Guwahati in Assam. We'd also be extremely grateful to the director of the IDIA Assam chapter, Ms. Mingma ma'am, who is with us today. We're extremely grateful to her constant guidance and patience with us as we try to, navigate our way through this online through the online years of this IDIA chapter. We would also like to offer our heartiest gratitude to the resource person for this workshop, without whom this entire event would not have been possible, and who has agreed so graciously and kindly and worked with us throughout this to make this a reality. So thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out the time from your busy schedule, and that too on a Sunday, no less, to grace our event and impart us with your invaluable knowledge and experience and guidance. Thank you so much, ma'am. Last but not the least, we'd like to thank the participants who again also took out times from their Sunday and came to learn new skills and about CV building and how to score internships. I'd like to thank all of the IDIA Assam chapter, the team members, the TTLs, and the team leader for their continued work to make this event a success. With that, I think we all can leave. We'll be
just a second.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great, like, being a part of this initiative. And I'd like to thank everyone for very patiently attending to what I spoke for about more than 1 hour. So thank you so much to everyone who's very patiently listened to me. And thank you to the whole Assam chapter. I know I was a part of the New Delhi chapter for IDIA for a very long time. So I know how difficult it is when you meet in person and you are doing the work for the chapter and selecting scholars, training them. And I can't imagine how difficult it would be to do it through online modes. So kudos to you guys that you guys are doing an excellent job at it. And thank you so much for having me.
The pleasure is really ours, ma'am. Mingma ma'am, would you like to say a few words before we end the session?
Sure. And firstly, again, I would like to thank Priyanka, because I know, like, first time when we initially planned about having this webinar, when the team said, like, they will try to reach out to you, I was actually scared, like, whether we'll be able to get her or not. Eventually, with the constant effort of the team, we are like, the team were able to get in touch with you, and finally, like, we could have this webinar. Thank you so much, Priyanka. And I would also like to congratulate the Assam team for successfully conducting this webinar. And we hope in future, Priyanka, you'll further collaborate us, or even, guide the team member, like how they can work more efficiently towards IDIA or be it any cause. So yeah, thank you, Priyanka, and congratulations.
Sure, I'll be glad to be of any help. And like, this is to all the attendees of the session. In case you have any doubts, maybe Shay can leave my email ID on the chat. You guys can reach out to me in case you have any doubt and if you want any guidance on your CV. So thank you so much.
Yes, thanks again, ma'am, so much. We have been live streaming to YouTube, so you may find a recording on the official IDIA page, because some people were asking for a recording to rewatch the entire webinar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Abhishri, I think you can wrap it up.
Ma'am, email.
Yeah, I'll just be dropping the email in the chat box. Just give me a minute. The people who do not need the mail can leave the call now. Thank you so much.